Rare were responsible for many of the experiences on the Super Nintendo, but one that resonated with so many people was Donkey Kong Country. Essentially a platformer, players take the role of one of two characters. Gameplay consists of many standard platforming elements such as running, jumping, and even rolling that all provide the means to take out the diverse set of enemies. Scattered throughout each environment are also an assortment of collectibles such as bananas and treasure, and with over 40 levels to traverse and overcome, there is plenty to keep you busy. Visually, Donkey Kong was extremely impressive upon its release, taking full advantage of an at the time primitive technology known as SGI that allowed 3D sprites to be rendered within the game, resulting in every character coming to life in a way that was not seen before on the system. To top this off, a stellar and memorable soundtrack was produced for the adventure that to this day still deserves a listen. By all means not the best platformer on the system, but one hell of a good time. Many people will instantly remember F-Zero. It depicts a futuristic world where a new type of entertainment has become the norm, the racing of high-spec machines known as F-Zero. The first aspect of the experience that will strike you is the incredibly fast-paced gameplay that was just an absolute joy to play back in the day, and somewhat of a technical marvel due to it taking full advantage of the Mode 7 system that allowed the visuals to take on a pseudo 3D style. F-Zero consists of 15 tracks to race upon, each offer separate levels of difficulty for the player to tackle, and with 4 characters, each with their own unique vehicles, there is a lot to experiment with. 5 laps in total comprise each race, with the racer lagging behind at the end of each lap being disqualified from the proceedings, which when coupled with the barriers on each side of the road that deal out damage, it can become slightly frustrating at first, but once everything clicks, it is one of the finest games available on the system, and something that every owner should have. Out of the many fighting games available for the system, Street Fighter 2 Turbo has to be one that profoundly changed the genre and influenced the many games that would follow it for years to come. The setup is simple. Each fighter is given the same basic attacks that can cleverly be chained together in order to form combos, as well as unique special attacks. With a total of 12 characters to choose from, there was a lot to experiment with, resulting in many ways in which to play the game. One huge aspect that stands out has to be the multiplayer mode, and this is where Street Fighter 2 Turbo is at its best. Sure, facing down with the CPU can be enjoyable, but there is nothing truly like taking on another player, which can result in some explosive moments. Turbo introduced a new way to experience Street Fighter 2, which granted the player to change the speed of the game, which in all honesty does nothing but help the experience when compared to the previous iterations. So if you're looking for a fighter on the Super Nintendo, look no further than Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Super Metroid is a platformer with a twist. Instead of focusing on getting from one end to the next, Super Metroid instead puts a huge emphasis upon exploration. This concept would go on to become so popular that it would spawn a subgenre known as Metroidvania. Now players take control of Samus, a bounty hunter sent to the outer regions of space in search of Ridley, the leader of a band of space pirates responsible for stealing a highly valuable entity known as Metroid. It just so happens to be the same one Samus previously brought back to be studied after the events of the previous adventure. It all takes place on the open-ended world of Zebes. Players are tasked with exploring and uncovering the mysteries of the planet, and aiding you along the way is a wide selection of power-ups that grant the player special abilities, such as enhancing your armor and weaponry, as well as special moves that can increase your speed as well as proficiency in jumping. Blocking the way forward are several bosses, which really are the highlight of the game. If you're looking for a challenging platformer to get stuck into, Super Metroid has got you covered. Earthbound is a rather quirky RPG. Instead of the journey taking place in a fantasy world, Earthbound instead subverted this trope and many other common aspects of the genre by not only taking place in the real world, but also mainly by poking fun at the many other games available in the genre that players have become accustomed to. The narrative follows a young boy known as SNES after he investigates a meteorite crash with his friends. Upon arriving, they discover an alien race known as the Geigers, who are hell-bent on consuming the world and its inhabitants by turning them into malicious fiends. Now the gameplay revolves around exploring the world and encountering enemies in order to level up and increase the party's effectiveness. Battles take place in a turn-based fashion and revolve around selecting actions from a predetermined list that range from healing, attacking, and even special abilities known as PSI attacks. Enemies occupy the world and can appear in most areas, with the difference being that random encounters do not occur. It leaves it up to the player's discretion in whether or not to participate in battles, which is a nice touch when compared to the several other RPGs of the era, and if you've yet to play it, you will find it to be one of the Super Nintendo's most enjoyable experiences. Players once again take up the role of vampire slayer Simon Belmont in an adventure set across Transylvania, with the goal being to ultimately take down Dracula and put an end to his evil schemes. Now it shares many similarities with the previous entries in the franchise, with the game taking place from a side-scrolling perspective and being comprised of 11 levels in total that all offer an escalating range of difficulty. Simon comes equipped with his staple weapon, the whip, which is used for a range of actions within each level. Not only can it be utilized for attacking enemies, but it also comes in handy when traversing wide areas. It's this simple but effective mechanic that makes Castlevania so fun and a joy to play. Complementing the whip is a set of secondary weapons that will also even the fight, such as axes and even a watch, which temporarily pauses all of the enemy's motion, giving players a chance to mop them up. Some call Super Castlevania 4 one of the greatest games of all time, and after spending some time playing it, it soon becomes apparent why. If this classic passed you by, now is the perfect time to jump in and try it out for yourself. Secret of Mana is a sequel to a game known as Final Fantasy Adventure. It sees the player following 3 heroes on an adventure to counteract an impending evil known as the Empire. The main aspect players will notice is the way battles play out in Secret of Mana. At the time, turn-based battle systems were the norm, whereas fights instead played out in real time during gameplay, which was a stark change to what players had been accustomed to. The player has the choice to control each of the 3 characters at will, or for those lucky enough to own a multi-tap, 2 friends can jump in on the action. Each of the heroes possesses their own unique abilities and attributes, such as using magic or a higher proficiency with weapons. A robust leveling up system is also in place that allows the freedom to build the characters to your liking. As you would expect with any RPG, Secret of Mana is a huge game. It manages to provide hours of gameplay in order to see the narrative reach its conclusion. So if you've yet to give this one a go and are a fan of the genre, Secret of Mana has everything you were looking for. For many fans, Super Mario World represents the pinnacle of the 2D Mario era. It manages to incorporate the many aspects that made the series so memorable over the years, all the while introducing new features and ideas that would not only make it stand out against the pile of clones, but cement it as one of the greatest games of all time. Now there's a total of 7 worlds to complete, each with their own set amount of levels, which adds up to one hell of a lot to get stuck into. Each level increasingly piles on the difficulty in a natural way. A new feature that Super Mario World introduced was Yoshi. It adds another dynamic in which players can take advantage of throughout play, giving them the ability to devour enemies and use them as a projectile, fly for extended periods, or even produce fireballs. Super Mario World would go on to influence the many Mario titles that would come after it, and to this day the several aspects it introduced still play a pivotal role in the games, starring everyone's favourite Italian plumber. Developed by Square and released in 1995, Chrono Trigger follows a band of heroes in a time-bending adventure set across an incredibly detailed and intoxicating world. The narrative picks up after an experiment involving teleportation goes catastrophically wrong. Now, one of the standout aspects of Chrono Trigger is its story, so I won't say much other than it's truly unforgettable considering the limitations of the technology at the time. The world is absolutely huge, which is home to a diverse set of NPCs as well as enemies that help flesh out the believability and uniqueness of each environment the heroes encounter. Aiding them on their quest is a huge array of weaponry and items that all bring their own distinct attributes to battles, and facilitates a wide amount of playstyles for players to experiment with. Battles take advantage of the active time system that revolves around a timer set on each character, which needs to run down before they can attack or use an ability. It adds an extra layer of urgency to each encounter, with enemies who were once defeated dropping experience points that contribute to the robust advanced leveling up system that facilitates the growth of each character, allowing players to tailor each to their liking. Chrono Trigger truly is an unforgettable game. It is now available on a wide choice of consoles for everyone to play if you've yet to jump into it. After several successful and well-received Zelda titles for the Nintendo Entertainment System, all eyes were on Nintendo to see where they would take their flagship series next. It was 1991 when fans were treated to A Link to the Past. To this day, it is one of the finest and most celebrated entries in the series. Now players assume the role of Link, who awakes from his slumber and sets off on a journey that spans the entirety of Hyrule. The action takes place from a top-down perspective, set across a diverse set of environments, such as castles, mountains, deserts, and even forests. There's a lot to see, and with a whole host of abilities and items at Link's disposal, it couldn't be more enjoyable. Many make a return from previous iterations in the series, such as the standard sword and shield, as well as new additions such as the new hookshot, spin attack, and master sword that went on to become staples of the franchise. Gameplay-wise, controlling Link has never been more simple. Everything is a lot more responsive, and as a result, overcoming the wide array of enemies and puzzles feels all the more rewarding. If you've yet to play this, there are several versions available on a wide selection of consoles, so it's never been easier to jump into one of Nintendo's best experiences.